Ladies and gentlemen, when a man enters the phase of no contact, it can feel like he's entering uncharted territory, both frightening and liberating in equal measure. This space, though isolating, is where growth happens. The first stage of no contact is often the most disorienting. It feels like an emotional earthquake. Everything you thought you knew, everything you had been certain of, suddenly shifts beneath your feet. At this point, the reality of the situation hasn't fully hit yet. There's a deep sense of disbelief that something so significant has occurred. A man in this stage may find himself constantly questioning, did this really happen? Is this truly over? The mind races, trying to grasp the situation and make sense of the silence. It's as though the body and mind are in a state of emotional paralysis, unsure of how to react or what to do next. This is not just a mental block, it's a defense mechanism. The mind is not ready to confront the full weight of what's transpired. In many ways, denial can be a protective shield. It's easier to hold on to the hope that this silence is temporary, that it will be broken soon. There's a sense of expectation. Maybe a text will come in, maybe a call, maybe a sign that everything is going to return to normal. Deep down, a man might tell himself that this is just a pause, a brief separation, something that will pass. This form of denial serves to soften the initial sting, offering some form of comfort in the midst of a storm. The journey through no contact often begins with an overwhelming sense of shock and disbelief. When a man first finds himself in this space, everything seems surreal. It's as though he's been thrust into an alternate reality where the rules of his world no longer apply. In this stage, his mind races, struggling to grasp the full scope of what has occurred. He might find himself asking, did this really happen? Or is this temporary? Denial becomes a protective shield, an emotional defense mechanism that cushions him from the full weight of the situation. In this moment, the thought of permanent separation may feel too hard to accept. It's common for him to hold on to hope that the situation will resolve quickly, perhaps by a message or a phone call that brings things back to normal. The thought of life without this person might seem impossible, creating a sense of emotional paralysis. The man may go about his daily activities in a mechanical way, trying to carry on as though everything is fine, even though deep down he knows something has shifted. Denial is a temporary state. It provides a mental buffer to help him handle the heavy emotions that will come later. However, it also delays the inevitable confrontation with the truth. While it may provide temporary relief, it's a barrier to healing. Eventually, the man must allow himself to accept the reality of the situation, but in the early days, denial serves as an emotional reprieve from the overwhelming grief that lies ahead. Anger and resentment. As the shock begins to wear off, the next emotional stage is often dominated by anger and resentment. It's in this phase that many men experience an eruption of emotions. The calm of denial fades, and what emerges is a boiling storm of frustration, bitterness, and at times, fury. This anger can stem from a variety of sources, feeling betrayed, abandoned, or even from the inability to control the situation. A third storm in men that might subside, but currently, upon the unexpected announcement of a pregnancy, there may be a sense of injustice, as if something was taken unfairly or abruptly. A man might replay past interactions, obsessing over moments that he feels were wrong or signs he missed. He starts to assign blame, not only to the other person, but sometimes to himself. Why didn't I see this coming? Or if I had just done this differently, maybe things would be different now. There's a powerful sense of wanting to change the past, to right the wrongs that led to this painful place. Anger in this phase is often laced with regret and guilt, and there's a heavy weight in wishing things had turned out differently. Resentment also emerges during this time, especially if the man feels mistreated or misjudged. He may harbor feelings of bitterness toward the other person, even feeling the need to blame them for the situation's outcome. These feelings can cloud his judgment, making it harder to see the situation clearly. In extreme cases, the anger becomes self-destructive, eating away at his peace of mind and making it more difficult to heal. This stage is crucial because it allows the individual to process the deep emotions of hurt and frustration. However, if not handled carefully, anger and resentment can become entrenched, preventing healing. It's important to recognize that this is a normal part of the grieving process, but staying in this stage too long can prevent growth and transformation. With time, reflection, and self-compassion, the intensity of this anger can subside, making room for deeper emotional work and eventually acceptance. As the initial waves of anger and denial subside, a man often enters a stage of profound self-reflection and isolation. This stage is quieter and more introspective than the previous ones, yet it is one of the most crucial phases in the emotional journey. With the noise of anger and the intensity of pain starting to fade, a man is left alone with his thoughts, often retreating inward to process everything that has happened. The sense of isolation here is not just physical, but deeply emotional. He may begin distancing himself from friends, family, and the world around him, preferring to be alone with his thoughts. It's a time where the distractions of daily life seem less appealing, and he might crave solitude in order to make sense of the emotional chaos inside. The man may withdraw because he feels misunderstood, not wanting to burden others with the weight of his feelings, or because he simply needs space to process his own thoughts without the judgment or advice of others. Self-reflection during this time is not just about looking at the relationship and what went wrong, it's about looking inward. He starts to ask difficult questions that may have previously been ignored or avoided. How did I contribute to this? What role did I play in the breakdown of this connection? This internal dialogue often leads to uncomfortable realizations. It's the moment when he faces his own flaws, mistakes, and vulnerabilities, things that he may have never fully acknowledged before. The mind may replay certain conversations, choices, and actions in an attempt to understand where things went astray. For some, this self-reflection is accompanied by guilt. He may see his mistakes clearly now and feel remorse for his actions or inactions. The emotional weight of this realization can be heavy, often leading to an internal conflict between self-criticism and self-compassion. On one hand, he may feel shame for his missteps, but on the other, he might realize that growth comes through recognizing and accepting these mistakes, not being held hostage by them. This is the crossroads where transformation begins, where the opportunity for change is most potent. This isolation also serves as a shield. The noise of the outside world, whether it's the expectations of others or the constant distractions of daily life, can interfere with the deep work needed to heal. During this phase, the man is forced to face himself and his emotions in their rawest form, and this is often uncomfortable. The silence allows him to hear his true self more clearly, a necessary step in rebuilding his sense of identity and understanding what he truly wants moving forward. It's also during this time that he starts to piece together the bigger picture of his life. The relationship may have been a part of his story, but is not his entire story. Self-reflection opens up the space to reconnect with his passions, values, and aspirations, things that might have been overlooked or forgotten during the course of the relationship. He might revisit old hobbies, interests, or dreams that once filled him with purpose and joy, but were sidelined for the sake of the relationship. This reconnection with his authentic self is key to regaining his sense of identity. However, the challenge during this phase is to balance reflection with self-compassion. It's easy to fall into a pattern of negative self-talk or self-blame. This stage requires a great deal of emotional maturity to recognize when self-reflection turns into self-criticism and to gently redirect it toward growth. It's about acknowledging the mistakes without letting them define him. Only through this delicate balance of introspection and compassion can a man move beyond the isolation and into a phase of true healing. While it's a lonely period, it's also a transformative one. The man begins to shed old patterns of thought, beliefs, and behaviors that no longer serve him. He starts to embrace the lessons learned from the past and builds a new framework for his life. In the stillness of isolation, he finds clarity. He learns to trust himself again and starts to understand the kind of person he wants to be, not just in relationships, but in all aspects of his life. Eventually, this stage of isolation becomes the fertile ground from which new growth can emerge. The quiet introspection gives way to newfound strength, resilience, and wisdom, preparing him to face the next stages of healing with a clearer sense of who he is and who he wants to become. After the intense emotional eruption of anger and resentment fades, the man often enters a phase of profound self-reflection. It is here that the noise of the external world quiets down and he begins to look inward. This stage can be both liberating and deeply uncomfortable. He starts to question his own actions, beliefs, and behaviors within the relationship. This is the time when he is no longer distracted by the chaos of blame or the turbulence of his emotions. Instead, he begins to wrestle with the truth of his own contributions to the situation. During this phase, isolation plays a pivotal role. Whether by choice or circumstance, the man might retreat from social interactions. He withdraws, often seeking solitude to process his emotions without the noise of other people's opinions or judgments. The external world feels overwhelming, and he finds it easier to confront his thoughts and feelings alone. This isolation can be therapeutic, offering the space needed to sort through the complexities of his emotions. However, it can also be lonely, as the man may feel disconnected from others, unable to fully articulate or share what he's going through. Self-reflection during this time is incredibly intense. The man asks himself difficult questions like, what did I contribute to the relationship's downfall? Where did I fall short? What can I learn from this? It is not just a moment of self-blame, but an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding. He may reflect on patterns of behavior, both positive and negative, that he carried into the relationship. This can include recognizing his own insecurities, communication failures, or perhaps emotional barriers that kept him from being fully vulnerable. It is a stage of facing his own flaws with an honest and sometimes painful clarity. While this period of self-reflection can lead to powerful personal growth, it is also emotionally taxing. The man may feel like he's lost touch with his sense of self. The identity he had while in the relationship no longer exists, and this can create a deep sense of confusion or self-doubt. The absence of external validation can leave him questioning his worth and place in the world. Still, this isolation and self-examination, though difficult, lay the foundation for healing and transformation. Through this process, he begins to understand who he is, not just in relation to others, but as an individual. Grief and heartache. Grief and heartache are natural companions during this phase of no contact. As the reality of the separation truly sinks in, the man begins to experience a profound emotional mourning. This stage is characterized by deep sadness, a feeling of emptiness that seems to stretch on endlessly. Grief here is not just the sorrow of the loss of the relationship itself, but also the loss of the future he had envisioned with that person, the shared dreams, the plans, the moments that can no longer be, and the futility. There is a sense of profound disillusionment as the image of a future together fades and gives way to uncertainty. The heartache feels physical at times, aching in the chest and overwhelming heaviness that clouds the mind and body. He might feel as though he's constantly carrying a burden that never seems to lighten. This emotional weight is both exhausting and consuming, and at times it can be hard to know how to move forward. There may be moments where everything seems suffocating and it feels like he'll never escape the emotional fog. The sadness can appear without warning, a memory, a song, a familiar place, small things that trigger waves of grief and remind him of what he has lost. During this stage, the man may also experience a deep sense of vulnerability. The loss of a relationship can feel like a personal failure, a blow to one's self-esteem, and it is in these moments that a man must confront the deepest parts of himself. This is when his emotional resilience is truly tested. It is in the tears, the sleepless nights, and the quiet moments of despair that his heart truly breaks open. The grief, while painful, is not only a sign of love lost, but also an indication of the depth of his emotional capacity. It's in these moments that he learns what it means to be truly vulnerable, what it means to allow the sadness to wash over him without trying to fight it. Heartache is not linear. It does not follow a simple trajectory of getting better. Instead, it comes in waves, some days more intense than others, and at times it may feel as though the pain will never end. The man may even wonder if he will ever feel whole again and whether the heartache will always linger in the background of his life. However, it is important to recognize that grief, no matter how intense, is part of the healing process. It is a necessary stage where emotions are released and where the man begins to process the depth of the loss. The beauty in this pain lies in the eventual growth it fosters, both emotionally and mentally. This stage is not about pushing away the grief or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about sitting with the pain, allowing oneself to truly feel, and knowing that healing will come in time. Eventually, as he moves through this intense grief, there will be moments of light. Small reminders that life, though forever changed, will continue. The heartache will ease. Not because the loss is forgotten, but because the man learns how to carry it with grace. Both the self-reflection and isolation and grief and heartache stages are deeply transformative. They represent the intense emotional labor required to heal from loss and to rebuild oneself in the face of pain. While they may seem like the most difficult parts of the journey, they are also the most significant in terms of personal growth and emotional resilience. After the intense emotional turbulence of the earlier stages, the man begins to emerge from the darkness of grief and pain. This stage, often a slow but steady process, marks the beginning of a profound transformation, and one that cannot occur without the emotional labor of all the preceding stages. It is during this phase that the individual begins to rebuild and reclaim the life that was put on hold, rediscovering his own strength and capabilities. This is where personal growth becomes not just a possibility, but a reality. Personal growth is often rooted in the lessons learned from the experiences and the emotional wounds of the past. In the depths of sorrow and self-reflection, the man starts to identify patterns and behaviors that contributed to the difficulties in his previous relationship. He begins to ask himself questions that lead to deeper self-awareness, such as, what did I learn about myself during this time? What are my strengths and weaknesses? How can I be a better person, not just for others, but for myself? This introspection, which may have been uncomfortable at first, begins to bring clarity. He recognizes his own needs and desires, not just in a relationship, but as an individual. The realization that personal growth is not dependent on someone else's presence is liberating. For a while, he may have felt incomplete, as though he were waiting for something external to fix the internal struggles. However, during this phase, he understands that the true work of healing and growth lies within him. It's in this quiet, introspective time that he starts to rebuild his sense of self-worth, learning to value himself for who he is, not for the roles he played in a relationship. This self-empowerment is a turning point, and it comes from acknowledging his own inner strength. As he navigates through this phase, the man begins to build new habits and routines that support his well-being and personal development. He might adopt practices like exercising, meditating, journaling, or even picking up new skills and hobbies. These activities not only distract him from the pain, but more importantly, serve as tools for self-improvement. Through these actions, he starts to build momentum toward the person he wants to become. The discomfort of the past gives way to new possibilities as he chooses to live intentionally and with purpose, rather than being at the mercy of his emotions. Hope, often dimmed during the earlier stages of the process, starts to emerge more clearly in this phase. It may begin as a small flicker, a glimmer in the distance, but over time it grows stronger. The man realizes that life is still full of potential. He is not defined by his past heartbreaks or his mistakes. Instead, he is defined by the way he chooses to learn from those experiences and move forward with resilience. The hope he begins to feel is not necessarily about rekindling the relationship, but about the future possibilities that await him. It's the hope that he can create a new chapter in his life, one that brings fulfillment, peace, and the potential for new relationships, both with others and with himself. This hope is tied to a deep sense of trust in the journey ahead. The man begins to see that no experience, no matter how painful, is wasted. Every step, every tear, every moment of discomfort has brought him to this place of clarity and self-empowerment. He learns to trust the process of life itself, knowing that challenges will come, but he is now equipped with the tools and resilience to face them head on. There's no longer a fear of what the future holds, but rather a curiosity and excitement for what could be. In many ways, personal growth and hope are about reclaiming agency over one's life. The man has moved from a place of emotional helplessness to one of empowerment.